CCW stands for
Justice Against the Tyranny.
Like
The Oppressed.
Follow
The Truth.
Subscribe
The Justice.
and stay tuned with this struggle.
CCW stands for Counterclockwise.
Assalamu alaikum YouTubers, this is Hussein from Counterclockwise. We are having a guest today from far land of Bermuda. You cannot believe, but there is a Palestinian activist living there. Alhamdulillah, we can see the rising voice of Palestinians literally everywhere, and that's a very good sign of triumph. So let's go to Hamilton, Bermuda, and be careful about the Bermuda Triangle. On the way, that Muslim guy. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Are you in Hamilton?
I am currently in Hamilton, Bermuda. Yes. In Bermuda. I'm
just
currently working here.
Yeah, that must be an interesting place, isn't it?
Oh, it's different, man. It's different.
Yeah, it's completely in the middle of the sea. I mean, I just checked it in the map. The more I was scrolling back, it was all sea. Yeah, it is. I mean, literally in the middle of the sea.
It is. You zoom in so much, then you're like, still?
Yeah.
You zoom some more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a very small island. Yeah, it's an interesting place. I'll put it that way. I call it like a bubble in the middle of the ocean that is one wave away from annihilation. But until that happens, it's like a paradise essentially. But it's like a little bubble that you're in, you know? Okay.
Is there any, other Muslims over there, or are you the only Muslim?
You know, surprisingly, that was my first question when I moved here, because I was in Canada before that. And I was like, I can't move to a place if I'm the only Muslim, there's no mosques. So I looked it up. And alhamdulillah, it turns out there's a Muslim community of approximately 500 people here. There's like 3 masjids. The problem is, unfortunately, like, you know, you'll have like 500 Muslims, but you'll have like maybe 250 maybe practicing.
200?
Them are like actually practicing. And then of those, maybe only half go to the masjids. You only really see like 100 out of the 500 Muslims. But it's still pretty good. Like there's a masjid close to work. There's a masjid close to my place. So it worked out, alhamdulillah.
Very, very weird. I mean, 200 Muslims over there, right?
Yeah, 500 in total, but like 200 that I've seen like in the masjid and like practicing and whatnot. There's a lot of people there who are Muslim, but they don't really practice. And it's mainly because like their grandparents would have been Muslim and they're Muslim, but they don't really know much about Islam, but they still identify as Muslim.
Yeah. What is the total population?
The total population is about 65,000 people, give or take. Like a small village in other places.
Yeah.
I was enjoying your talk, Hussein, and I don't know how to call you, that Muslim guy, or what should we call you? Muhammad, that's great, Muhammad.
Yeah.
You're originally from where, Muhammad? Because I think you have an Arabic accent.
I am from, originally I'm Palestinian, but I grew up between Kuwait and Canada.
MashaAllah, great. That's great.
Now I'm living currently in Bermuda. So it's just I'm an international citizen at this point.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
What about you? Are you currently, I believe Brother Hussein said you were currently in Iran as well?
Yeah, I'm currently studying here in Iran. I'm doing my PhDs in studies of religion. And I'm from Srinagar, the Indian administrated Kashmir, with an Indian passport, of course. And I have been to Gaza in 2011. I was in Gaza with a group of peace activists, and you know we were among the organizers of the first Asian caravan to break the siege of Gaza. So in 2011, with a group of like 150, guys, we entered Gaza through Rafah crossing. So that was, a turning point in my life as well. Because there we got in connection with the activists from across the globe, and also we managed to work on a nation-based activism for the cause of Palestine. Still alive and still active, alhamdulillah. Still alive and still active. Brothers from Malaysia, Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and also the Middle Eastern countries as well. I mean, they were always there, but there were no voice being heard from that part of the world.
Mm-hmm. Wow, mashallah, that's very, very impressive. You've been there before I have.
Yeah. That was a great experience to be in Gaza. For 4 days I was there. I mean, starting days of January 2011. Second, third, fourth, and fifth, those 4 days were great, actually.
Wow.
Anyways, Hossein, how are you? So
yeah, I was thinking about that this is the dream. I should tell you, because you said you're originally from Palestine, that this is a dream of Iranian people to visit the Al-Aqsa, and to go to Palestine. And I was just dreaming of me, myself, going there somewhere. Because as you know, the Iranian passport is banned from going to there because of the Iran and Israel conflict and so on. So we hope, we are telling each other, and we are telling ourselves that it is soon, it's going to happen soon. So let's pray for that. Yeah. So we shall start.
When I was there, there was a board in Gaza that was written over there. Al-Aqsa 70 kilometers far away. So 70 kilometers is actually what we can also go by bicycles as well, but we were not allowed to go to that. And just 70 kilometers, you're feeling that it's just over there. It's not too too far. I mean, it's very close. And that was very difficult to see that you have just 70 kilometers distance from Masjid Al-Aqsa, and you are not allowed to go and pray there.
Yeah. And it was, the people used to go there before the occupation. It's not very far. 60 years ago, 70 years ago, the people from Hajj, they were going to Al-Aqsa, and they came back to Iran, and it was a ritual for them. It was ordinary, but I don't know why we have to dream for it right now. And it's
the same from India. From the Indian Ocean who were going to Hajj, they were going by those ships at that time, and they were going from Bombay port, and they were going to Hajj, and then they were coming back after doing a pilgrimage to Al-Aqsa Mosque, and then returning back.
Yeah.
That was a typical route in that time.
Yeah. So can we start by you, Rollah? Can you start the conversation? We get to the business.
I was always wondering specifically what I observed since 2010-11, since 2008 actually. I have been following the wars on Gaza and the conflicts between Palestinian side and the. But what I observed in the recent war, in that 11 days of assault on Gaza, I was realizing that something new was emerging in social media and the independent activism here and there. That's what I smelled actually, and you may accept or reject, I don't know. I was feeling that it's a new generation of the activists on social media are there to talk about Palestine and to break this media siege on Palestinian cause. And that was intriguing me more than any other event that took place during that couple of weeks of war. So that was what I suggested to talk about. I believe there's a rise in that independent sort of activism, and I found the account of Brother Muhammad the crisis, and I got to know that he should be a Muslim Arab who's not living in his own country somewhere, but there he's trying to contribute by using his social media platforms. So you may give your feedbacks on what I said.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, because if you look at pretty much anything that's been happening in Palestine or to Palestinians since 1948 or even before 1948, right? All we really have from that are like maybe some black and white footage, some signed reports here and there, but there's not, it's very difficult to really speak to someone who's, for example, lived at that time, because either like they've passed away, or it's just, you can look at it and say, oh, but it's hearsay, it's your word against mine. But then nowadays, with the technological age, when you look at 2008, 2009, 2010, all the way, maybe 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, it was still a lot of information coming from the news. So people would just watch the news, And that's it. And they would say, oh, the news says Palestinians refuse peace, Israel's defending itself, it's Hamas. Done. And then you would have Al Jazeera saying the opposite, then you'd have CNN, MSNBC, and all those, and Fox News saying the opposite, saying no, Israel's defending itself. And people, it would just be your word against mine. Who knows? Why can't both sides get along? Until social media really started making its presence through not just Facebook, but also Instagram, mainly Instagram. And now we started seeing Palestinians taking back the narrative. So the internet has made it possible for, as you said, independent social activists or independent social media activists all over the world to stand up for Palestine. So I feel like that way it has taken the power away from the traditional news companies, because people no longer now watch the news for information, especially with the younger generations, but rather we get our news from social media where people actually live in a certain conflicted location or people living under occupation, like in Palestine, and they see the streams of what's happening. And they see that actually there's a discrepancy. And they start realizing the news is actually biased. There's hypocrisy. There's some lies being spewed. Because nowadays, Palestinians can record and expose the atrocities that are happening to them, be it in Gaza, be it in the West Bank and occupied East Jerusalem. And the fact that during the recent bombings that started in Ramadan, actually the first day of Ramadan, it started, and then it stopped, and then it continued again. For the first time, we started seeing people live streaming bombings. Let people on Instagram Live, going live with people with Palestinians in Gaza. And as they're talking, you would hear bombs. As they're reading, you would see buildings collapse. And this was happening in real time. It was no longer, this happened yesterday, but rather, this happened 20 seconds ago. And then the news starts spreading like wildfire. For the longest time, there are far-right Israeli groups chanting death to Arabs in East Jerusalem, chanting death to Arabs wherever, attacking Palestinians, Israeli settlers attacking Palestinians. But it wasn't really documented. Now it's actually being documented. The flag parade just recently took place in Israel. The flag parade where they were celebrating the illegal occupation of East Jerusalem. Suddenly you see videos of them chanting death to Arabs, anti-Muslim chants. The second Nakba is coming. Meanwhile, the Israeli government has been denying the first Nakba and the first. Do you remember that video where this man came to Israeli settler, has been given their house, Al-Quds family, has been given their house. And on camera, this guy goes, well, if I don't steal it, somebody else will. And I can just see the Israeli government go, take this man back to Brooklyn, send this man back to Brooklyn, or Long Island, or wherever he's from. Bring another one. This man's saying too much. So all of these things have started backfiring on Israel. And the fact that we're seeing even Palestinians living in we call it Aradi 48, the 48 lands that were taken and occupied and now part of Israel, right? Israel has always perpetuated the narrative that we are the only democracy in the Middle East. Everybody's free to do whatever they want. Palestinian, Arab, Israeli, whatever. Everyone is free. Everyone's a citizen. And then now, with the rise of social media, we see Palestinians living in Israel with Israeli citizenships, exposing how they're treated as second-class citizens on a good day. Being told you can't leave your home, and if you leave your home, you're going to get hurt, essentially. And you start realizing, oh, there we go. Being exposed from within, literally. We start seeing Palestinians in the West Bank who've been saying we live under apartheid, and the whole world has said, no, apartheid ended in South Africa. There's no such thing as apartheid. That's an over-exaggeration. And then once it's documented, you start realizing, hold up, you have separate roads? What? And then you start realizing all the definitions of apartheid are being met in how Israel is treating Palestinians in the West Bank, which is, by the way, illegal.
Even beyond apartheid, some of the acts of the regime, Israeli regime, is much beyond the apartheid of the South Africa. Some of their acts were not even taken during the apartheid of South Africa.
Yeah, and that's something that it's hard to even wrap your mind around. Because I remember I have South African friends here in Bermuda, and when I was making videos about Israel and Palestine and the Israeli aggression against Palestinians, and I said the word apartheid, and they were taken aback, and they said, "Mo, you can't say that. Like apartheid is serious." And I said, "Do you not know how serious it is in Palestine?" And then when I started explaining it to them, they said, "We never imagined that there would ever be apartheid in this day and age." Which is something which I completely understand. It's not logical. It's not reasonable, right? And you only know it if you've been following the news, or if you're Palestinian, or if you know what's happening in Palestine. But just furthermore to that,
you know why that is? You know why that Muslim community, as an African, doesn't know what is going on in the Palestine? I mean, when you say apartheid, they just shocked, and because I believe it's a warfare going on using words. I mean, using a specific vocabularies instead of what it has to be used. I mean, for example, the word conflict. The word conflict is the most disgusting word that, I mean, as a vocab that they use for the issue of Palestine. We have to do. I mean, this is a kind of jihad that we have to do, and just replacing these vocabularies with the correct ones. When they say conflict, you should say, oh no, you should say apartheid, not conflict. When they say, for example, I don't know, a two-state solution, there is no two-state solution. There is no other state. There is no, I mean, the second state. There's just one state. And if the Jews want to live there, they have to be, I mean, I don't know, vote or something, or that's the kind of warfare that we have to use. I'm sorry for the interruption. I just had to say that.
No, I completely agree. I completely agree, because I made a video about saying words matter, and words matter, because when you say conflict, you're just saying, oh, both sides. There is no both sides. One is a nuclear power. One has homemade rockets, which, by the way, Israel has something called the Iron Dome that nullifies them. And then everyone else has rocks. Like, there's no two sides. One has all the power and is occupying. One has none of the power and it's under occupation. And according to international law, and this is something that is very controversial to say for some reason, according to international law, Palestinians defending themselves against Israel, they're actually doing it in accordance with the law, while Israel is attacking them and occupying them illegally under international law. But because Israel has been able to play around with the media and spread its propaganda, and anytime someone says anything, you're immediately anti-Semitic and you're a Holocaust denier, they just throw words out there to make you feel as if you're anti-Semitic if you're criticizing Israel, but Israel does not represent Judaism. But back to your play on words. So it's like when in the news, they kept saying, 40 Palestinians died today, 2 Israelis were killed. That by itself, Palestinians don't just die. They don't just fall out of the sky and die. Bombs fall out of the sky and kill them. So it's just those words that they use. Small things like that can change an entire narrative. And just to
one question, Muhammad, I had
watching, I'm sure it's going to get taken out of context. So when you said this is the jihad that people have to do, there's always going to be a few Islam players going, "Oh my God, he said the jihad word. He's going to kill the West." No, jihad. No, jihad literally means a struggle, or it means to struggle for something. So studying for an exam is a form of jihad. So a jihad on words, essentially a struggle against these words, against this propaganda. So when you take that out of context, also please use the Southern accent as well, because it adds more value. But what I wanted to just add to that is something that you just never imagine, and that's and it's hard to say without like just saying, how's this real? Like, there's an intimidation tactic that Israel uses a lot, and I've heard about this a lot growing up, and I was like, but I mean, really? Like, is it exaggerated? And it turns out now with the rise of social media, it's been documented very clearly, and that's in many places where there's a lot of civil unrest because Palestinians are living under occupation and they have nothing else but to stand up and try to defend themselves as their homes are being taken by settlers from Europe or America. When they stand up and they protest, Israel will kidnap their family members. They'll do night raids. they'll kidnap family members, sometimes a father or mother, and in many kinds, children, be it a child or a teenager. And they will hold them in administrative detention, which means you are not accused of anything. There's
no trail, no charge.
There's no court date. Yes, there's no court date. There's no lawyer. There's nothing. You're just held there indefinitely, and you're being tortured and they will torture you until they extract a false confession, whereby you just confess so the torture stops, and they're like, all right, 30 years in jail. So something like that. Like right now, there's an account called Gaza Girl, and she's been talking a lot about this. Like there's the Bernat brothers, for example, people that she knew, kidnapped, just taken.
Yeah.
And they're like, you'll never see them again. Keep protesting. Cool. We'll keep your kids, in a way. So things like that are just starting to be exposed, and people are starting to realize that this is reality and this is happening. But just
one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I had one more question, Muhammad. Like, I was following the events from the very beginning. As you mentioned, their lives on Instagram were fantastic. They were just like tens of thousands of people simultaneously watching what's going on in Al-Aqsa Mosque or in those nights of air raids on Gaza. But suddenly we saw, and the Israelis also got, very sensitive towards what the role social media is playing. So they started to push back by putting pressure on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. So this is an ongoing problem of we all activists on social media. We are losing our accounts again and again, getting, blocked by social media for going live, blocked for. So how do you deal with that? And I'm sure that you have also faced those. Even we are not allowed to write sometimes the name of the, particular names we are not allowed to write and type them. So how do you react to that? And how was your experience about that?
How do you experience that freedom of speech, actually, you should say?
Yeah, so-called freedom of speech.
That's true. And subhanAllah, I was just going to move over to that point, subhanAllah, and you just brought it up. Yeah. So I just wanted to say something right before that. And that is that social media is a double-edged sword, right? Just as we can use it to raise awareness, Israel can use it for the exact opposite effect, right? To continue their propaganda. So, and that goes in two ways. Number one, spewing their propaganda, and number two, censoring our activism. So you may have seen this where they were spewing propaganda, and it's just the funniest way. Like the first way is, of course, always blaming Hamas, right? Everything they do but Hamas. And if you say Hamas enough times, people go, okay, I'm sorry, and they back off. The second one was, I don't know if you've seen this, but their use of the IDF thirst traps on TikTok. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Essentially, that's where they use like really good-looking. Some of them might be IDF soldiers, some of them might be paid models, but essentially they put them in Israeli Defense Forces uniform, and they do a dance on a TikTok song, and they're just spreading propaganda, essentially, and saying like, oh, how could I ever hurt a child? Do I look like someone who could hurt a child? I'm like, put that gun down. Put the gun down. And that kind, in a way, that started exposing them. Like, really? Children are dying, and you're putting a model to dance and spread your propaganda? And they also did it through propaganda hashtags like, what does Zionism mean to me? Just to try to invoke emotion, because they can't win the facts war, because the facts are clear, so they start trying to invoke emotion. Like, Zionism means X, Y, and Z to me. If you're against this, you're anti-Jewish, which is not true. But when that's not working, they go to censorship. And as you said, censorship could be posts being deleted, stories being taken down. It could be accounts being deleted and being threatened of being deleted. So for me, I haven't had my account threatened of being deleted yet. I guess just because I don't have that much of a voice or social media influence. So I guess in a way, it's kind of a slap in the face that I didn't get a threat of that nature. I don't know if I should take that, if I should be offended. But on Facebook, I've had a bunch of my videos on YouTube and on Facebook. A few of my videos have suddenly had new restrictions I've never seen in my life. Like, this video is age restricted. So my video on Facebook hit like 140,000 views, and suddenly it became age restricted and people couldn't share it anymore, which is weird. I've had stories being taken down, which is normal. I've had people reach out to me and say, I can't share your video. I can't find your video. I can't find my comments on your video. Things are being removed and deleted. But then there have people who've suffered worse. There are people who've had their accounts just taken down. overnight. They've had people who've had complete videos taken down, people whose Instagram lives they weren't allowed to even record videos live because they're in Gaza or they're trying to interview someone in Gaza, live streaming bombings. And that has a lot to do with Israel and Zionist influence in companies, tech companies, including Facebook, where I believe under censorship board they had an Israeli American or Zionist American, which they kept saying it was a technical glitch, but apparently technical glitches only happen against Palestinian posts.
Against Palestinians.
So, yeah. So what a coincidence, you know? So that happened a lot. So what people started doing in return was they started downvoting on the app, on the App Store. They started giving Facebook a 1 rating.
I have a question because you mentioned the evangelicals actually of the United States or the other places. As you are American Palestinian, I'm just wondering, is there any other communities other than the hardliners of evangelicals that support these kind of apartheid of Israel? I mean, is there? I mean, we in the recent war, in the recent, I don't know, reaction to the war actually that happened around the world, all of the demonstrations, all of the protests was against the apartheid of Israel. But I haven't seen a single one, I mean, except for the ones that Jews were running inside Israel, I mean, in the other countries. Have you seen any other communities? Can you give us some names that supports the apartheid of Israel?
That support the apartheid of Israel.
Yeah, regardless of those Anglicans, you mean regardless of those hardliner Christians.
Because I'm evangelical Christians that support Zionism. There are, I'm pretty sure, some in Canada, but the majority are in the United States. But given that I'm Canadian, I'm not there with specific groups in the United States that do this. I'm just more, I have a general understanding of it in general as to the evangelical Christians' agenda, essentially, where they're trying to bring forth the Armageddon, and the only way that could happen is for Israel to reach its highest power, and then that's why they're pretty much constantly supporting Israel no matter what. Every single president you've heard is always saying we support Israel unconditionally and all that kind of stuff, and they have their own agenda behind that. But for other politicians who aren't even evangelicals, it just has to do with Israel pressure groups like AIPAC and those, where they're just they have some good lobbying groups, and honestly, like, these are some good strategies that I think Muslims need to apply. Assalamu alaikum. Back.
Assalamu alaikum. What was the problem?
I don't know. Could this possibly be part of censorship? Who knows?
Yeah, I said that. I said that we have gone too far.
Yeah.
I was wondering Muhammad is alive or not.
Like, someone's knocking on the door.
Forget that topic. Hussein, forget that topic.
That's a sensitive topic.
Okay, I had a question. If Hussein, if you allow me, I may ask Muhammad a question. Sure. Maybe the final question, because I don't think that, because it's almost, I think, half an hour we are going like. I had a question about, you have heard all about this normalization of ties with Israel, and that has a political part. I mean, that has a political part with some of the governments who are, because of any pretext, that are going to make their ties normalized with the Zionists. But I believe the normalization of ties has a cultural aspect as well. That is how Israel is trying to portray its image as a normal country, because this is the wish. The legitimacy is still yet the biggest, challenge of the Zionists after 1947. Yet they are looking in 1948. They're yet after the Nakba, 15th of May. They're yet looking after legitimation. But when you're going to deal with the people, I mean, and a part of those people to whom we have to talk, they're not all Westerns, non-Muslims. A part of them are our own brothers and sisters. They have questions in their mind, and this because of the ongoing, media war that are working again and again, targeting the hearts and the minds of the people to normalize Israel as a normal regime, normal country, or something like the other countries. At least, okay, there are so many bad countries. Israel is among them. Nothing different, too much different, or basically different. So how do you look at that, and what's your stand on that as well?
Yes. So when it comes to the normalization between, like, for example, the Emirates and Israel, right? When you look at that, there are two aspects to that. So there's the Middle Eastern cultural aspect of that. Then there's what this says to the rest of the world. So first of all, we have to understand that normalization had already occurred a long time ago, but it was just under the table. We say they still had some shame. You know what I mean? Muslim majority. I don't like to say Muslim countries or Muslim governments. I just say Muslim majority countries, right? Their governments had some shame where they were like, look, we're not going to attack Israel. We know. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to say, every now and then when they start killing Palestinians and they do something outrageous, we'll stand up and say, this is not acceptable. And then we'll sit back down and nod. But they had that shame where they wouldn't just say, yeah, do whatever you want. Who cares? Put your embassy in my capital. Who cares? They didn't have that. And then slowly, we start seeing them going public in it. Whereby now we are doing official normalization ties. We're doing a press conference. We're doing a tour. We're shaking hands. I'm going to go to your country. You come to my country. And now let's open up embassies. And that's more in your face. Which, in a way, I guess it's a blessing in disguise, because now you see, there's no more hypocrisy. I know exactly who's saying what. I know exactly your stance. So from the Middle Eastern cultural side, it's saying, in a way, it's saying, you will accept this. This will become normal. You will be outraged now, but in a few years, it'll just become normal. And what are you going to do about it? If you say something, we're going to kick you out of the country. If you say something when you're in the country, we'll jail you. So people, I'm sure the majority of the populations of countries who have normalized ties don't like it. But they can't say anything about it. You can't do anything about it because the law's in place. Because as we know, freedom of speech isn't thriving as much as it should be. On the other end, it's signaling to the rest of the world that, look, the rest of the world doesn't go, the Emirates is this or Saudi Arabia is that. No, they go, those are Muslim countries and they've normalized ties, or it's supposed to be normal. It's the Palestinians. They're the ones who are crazy, who don't want peace. Here's Israel normalizing ties. So now it just signals to the rest of the world that, look, everything is all cool, everything is good. We're just going to maintain relationships and open embassies and start tourism and forget about this whole Palestine thing. And now whenever Israel does anything, those governments don't say anything anymore. They don't speak up. They just let it happen, and they don't even try to pretend anymore. So I think it's just a bigger plan of just making sure that the rest of the world just realizes, they just fall back into that propaganda of, it's just the Palestinians are crazy, and Israel is just trying its best to maintain these barbaric savages.
I always wonder, the first Arab country that started its relations with Zionists was Egypt. The biggest, the most powerful, with its ancient, historical and civilizational background. Yet if you look at Egypt after 40 years of normalization of ties, after Camp David, and after Ahmad Sadat traveled to Knesset and delivered a lecture in Knesset of Israel, what is the current condition? Let's look at it from the materialistic perspective, the current economic development condition of Egypt. And we all know that because as you mentioned, I'm observing that some of these Gulf countries are, they are telling that all the problems is because of Palestine. No, they are putting all the burden on the Palestinians. If there is any backwardness, it's because of Palestine. It's because Palestinians are not letting us be. Yeah. But for God's sake, look at Egypt as a good example in front of us of 40 years of normalization of ties. They bowed actually in front of the Americans and the Zionists after Camp David. But what they got actually, this is quite bizarre and quite insane that they are expecting that having ties with Zionists will let them to get progress and development and wealth and all these.
We're back in business. Yeah, I remember I lost you when you were saying when Egypt normalized ties, and I look at the conditions. Then I lost you.
Yeah, just my final word. I was telling that even Egypt that started its normalization of ties got nothing economically. Egypt was supported totally by United States of America. Egyptian army was supported by them. Egypt was the first country that started this taboo, broke this taboo of normalization of ties. Where they are. I mean, what is their condition currently? Looking it from the perspective of economics and development and all these stuffs. So what they are going to achieve, I don't know what they're expecting they're going to achieve. They're expecting that Zionists will invest in their countries and they will get progress. Is this what they are going to achieve? It's quite insane and silly, quite bizarre. I mean, how they are dealing with it.
So essentially, I don't think that the Arab nations that have normalized relations with Israel, I don't think they did it for economic purposes. Because when it comes to economic purposes, a lot of countries are corrupt, and the economy kind of goes down because of the corruption that takes place from the top down. But a lot of it, I believe, is political pressure, where a lot of the leaders, they don't really care. They don't really care. Palestine, Jerusalem, who cares? It's all about how can I maintain my status, my power, my wealth, and give my children inheritance of these lands, right? And make sure that they're successors to me when I leave. I think the thing that made this the most clear to me, and this happened when the Emir of Kuwait just recently passed away, just a few months ago. Yeah. And what he said was, and Kuwait has always been a strong supporter of Palestine. And now I don't know what happens on the tables, but officially they are always supporters of Palestine. And the Emir, what he said, and this came out from one of the people in his close circle, before he passed away, because he was relatively old, quite sick, and before he passed away, American representatives tried to pressure him to normalize relations with Israel before he passed away. Kuwait's the 5th largest oil producer in the world. They have the strongest currency in the world. They don't need anything economically from Israel, from that sense. But that's just political. And they said, and they kind of tried to sweet talk it into, you can create this deal of the century, essentially, before you pass away. And the beautiful thing that he said, and this is based on what reports have come out now, and I hope this is true because this was very beautiful. And he said, I will not, in the very final moments of my life, give in to this and turn my back on Palestinians before I go meet my Lord. Right before his passing. So this shows that it's all political. They just want all these countries to politically show their ties with Israel, just so everything can become normalized, and just so everything can, in a way, go in favor of Israel and against Palestinians in Palestine.
It's great.
So it's a mess, unfortunately. It's a mess, and all we can do is our part.
We'll keep on. Using any opportunity, any platform in support of Palestine and Palestinians.
We keep on struggling, inshallah.
Yes, inshallah. No other way. Resistance in the sense of struggling at the social media level and making people more aware. That's what Muhammad is doing since month, I think, and that's what we all should do.
What I was going to say was just to build on what you said, and that is essentially all we can do is our part, and social media has made it very easy for us to do our part, and that is to take action through whether it's organizing rallies, signing petitions, pressure campaigns to email representatives in government, and fundraising for Palestinians for separate causes who are impacted by the occupation. And generally, the very least, if you can't make content, if you can't write anything, you can't make videos, it's just sharing the content that other people make to raise awareness. And that is the bare minimum that we can do. The bare minimum we can do is just share the content that other people make about Palestine to raise awareness.
Sure. That is the best.
And this is the final thing. I know you guys have so I have a YouTube channel called That Muslim Guy, and as well That Muslim Guy on Facebook and Instagram. But I know you guys have a YouTube channel as well called Counterclockwise. So what do you guys
just
talk about there as well? Like also political.
We have just started, and I think we are going to edit this video also and upload it there on YouTube as well. So send me the link of your YouTube channel. We will add it to the video. We will make a caption and ask people to subscribe your channel as well. I have a personal channel on YouTube. I will send you my personal channel. Sabazullah Rizvi's personal channel on YouTube, and we will share our contacts. And we'll try to increase this. Influence.
Going. Keep the momentum rising. That's all that matters. And yeah, and I appreciate you guys for reaching out, and appreciate you for giving me the time to speak about this. And inshallah, many more opportunities to come.
Inshallah.
More interviews to come.
Haya bik Muhammad. Haya bik. Salam alaik.
Salam alaikum.
Salam alaikum. Have a good one.